appreciate y'all being here. Working with us on schedule. We'll eventually get back to having maybe 2 Tuesdays in a row, but obviously with the 4th, I hope everybody had a great 4th of July, and obviously we all know this is a busy week for people in this community, friends and family, between 4th of July and Blue Angel weekend. I joke it kind of feels like the New Orleans version of Mardi Gras weekend, between who's in the office and not, and it's always a little bit of a weird week this week, so I appreciate y'all. Safe 4th, as well as a happy and safe Blue Angels weekend this weekend. A couple updates I want to give. First, we had the officer-involved shooting on I believe it was June 28th was the date we had, and you saw I'm sure the details released by PPD, and I've got Chief Randall here to answer any questions that he can. Obviously, this is it's now under investigation, as all officer-involved shootings are with FDLE, and we can't really, again, give much details on an open investigation other than I know as good an update as we were able to get today is that we don't expect that to be wrapped up at any point this week. That we know that aspects of the investigation will be taking place and are scheduled for next week. So just a heads up that I wouldn't expect anything concrete out of that FDLE investigation at any point this week. So, but again, any technical questions that we can attempt to answer, certainly happy to do that, and I've got Chief Randall here to be able to do so. There was the house fire on Sunday, July 2nd, and it's just been, a sad and unfortunate rash of house fires. Obviously, there's one in the city and one in the county on the same day, but the amount of fires and fatalities happened in the city of Pensacola, this is an extreme outlier for us when you just look at the amount of incidents that we had previously. And of course, they're not necessarily attributed or associated by any means, but it really is moving us for some action, and we'll have more to come on a smoke alarm program that we're going to be partnering, I know, our fire department as well as the Red Cross, on trying to get the word out there and get as much equipment, smoke alarms, in people's hands as possible. As unfortunately you guys already are familiar with, the direction of this investigation, same thing, is under investigation by the Bureau of Fire, Arson, and Explosives, and that was the fire from Sunday, July 2nd, 12:20 on the 1200 block of 8th Avenue, and one adult male was pronounced dead on scene. And we had one minor issue with a firefighter who was evaluated and treated on scene by EMS for heat stress, but apparently all is well with him. We are going to partner through again with the American Red Cross and Pensacola Fire Department on the Sound the Alarm program, and again we'll get some more details out to you. But we know that one of the big cause of issues of fires and fatalities is not having the proper smoke alarm and the proper equipment for warnings. And so Chief Craner and I have had several conversations about this. This is not a new concept. Obviously, this fire department and others have had a focus on that, but this one of these is too many, and we've been talking about a lot of them lately. And so I don't want us in any way to be complacent. Anything but urgent, really. And we know that these kinds of things can affect even more specifically our Pensacola citizens in the underserved community and the lower income neighborhoods that either don't have the equipment at all, can't afford to do so, aren't changing batteries out regularly, things like that. So we got to stand up and realize that despite the fact that this is, again, an outlier period of fires and fire fatalities in our community, we got to do something. And we have an amazing fire department. Again, this is not their first initiative in this respect, but I really want to put the bandwidth and the energy behind the administration to not just say that this is the fire department's job to get the word out, but we're going to have a collaborative effort citywide across every department we can and our city council to try to do something. So the active transportation plan is available for review. This was obviously something that had been funded in the previous administration. I'm certainly very supportive of, and it was and continue to be, about how we can take a holistic look at the city and what our needs are for moving pedestrians and bicyclists around our community and where those priority areas are. So that draft active transportation plan is now available for review and comment at cityofpensacola.com/active transportation plan. And you can provide feedback between now and next Wednesday, so you have a week till July 12th. And the draft sought the public's input to help develop a forward-thinking plan on walking, biking, other human-powered modes of getting around the Pensacola community. So really, I've gotten a chance to, I haven't gotten into great detail. It's a large report, but I have been able to spend about 30, 45 minutes or so going through it. And it really is, it's interesting, and it's great to have, a plan overall, not whether we're redesigning roads, whether we're repaving roads. I like having these holistic looks at where is the best place to use our resources, where can it impact the most good, where can it impact the most people. So I'm really excited after getting all the community feedback to really dive into that and start to use that as our priority list moving forward for improving bikeability and walkability in our community. And I know we've mentioned always stop. We've got the signage out there now at Government and Jefferson that the new stop signs will go in tomorrow. So right there at Seville Quarter, in the corner of Plaza Ferdinand, that will be a four-way stop. So weather permitting, that the installation will happen tomorrow. So with that is it for me, and happy to take your questions. Yeah.
Mayor, the former Runyon shipyard lease with Skanska is either done or will be done next month. Has the city been in any talks with the property owner over there about the city's interest in that property?
Yeah, we had some preliminary is a strong word. We've had some, when you have 21-ish acres of finite waterfront property in city limits come available, I don't care in what circumstance, obviously I think it's prudent of the city to look into that. Now, what could be done there? We were kind of having a further analysis of what could be done, and then also how it could be funded. And for example, land acquisition has happened in the case of Triumph. It's happened in many other ways. But with that comes a certain type of job that would need, a certain pay requirement, a certain level of job that would qualify for those things. So it hasn't really. Nothing concrete has happened, I would say, outside of those conversations, because obviously there's a big expense to that, and could we look at a piece of property like that as a potential port terminal west where you could have some that needs access to water, but there are some limitations. You can't get a large boat in there. You've got a bridge, the Bayou Chico Bridge, that is limiting. Even in the case of an American Magic, they would not have been able to get the boat underneath the Bayou Chico Bridge. So as Skanska, as you saw, they were using it for barge access, which is, you can get barges.
The whole deal.
Yeah. So, but it's not as some of the value that the port's geographic location has is that it's access to deep water and it's unfettered access from the Gulf. Is certainly a little different. There's additional nuance and challenges in terms of water access and how you could use it. So yeah, we've had, again, nothing more than conversations at this point. But again, I think that's my job and our job as a city is if there was a potential opportunity to do something with property like that. Obviously, again, waterfront property with waterfront access doesn't come along every day.
So the thrust of what I hear you saying of the city's interest has been port operations, Port of Pensacola, sort of. That's what the rumor has been.
Yeah.
Around town for a while.
It could be. Look, nothing would stop a business from calling us tomorrow and saying, "Hey, we're looking for 21 acres." It doesn't have to be a port function or a city function, right? And nothing would stop the private market from coming in. If we can be good partners for the private market to come in and this be a suitable piece of property for them, I think that's a good thing. good or bad, the interesting thing with large parcels of property right now is we could come up with just about anything and call it a need, right? I mean, if that was housing, would anybody argue the value of needing housing right now, even if the private market took that on? And it's not zoned that way, but with Senate Bill 102, maybe it is. So, I think any development at that property, whether it's done by the city or partnered by the city or has nothing to do with the city, is a good thing. But we always keep our eyes and ears open, whether it's the motor lodge, whether it's 21 and a half acres on the water. We try to be play offense and see what we think could be something that's good for us. So we'll always continue to do that, but nothing substantive at all at this point with any of those conversations.
Marietta's got that enormous rail yard over there where they have offload aggregate, and it would be separated from the Runyon property by, I don't know, quarter of a mile of water barge traffic. So is that what the idea here is? Maybe Martin Marietta would vacate the downtown port. It would eventually hook up to the rail thing of Bayou Chico.
Yeah, I don't even think it's gotten that far. Martin Marietta, whether that property would be functional for them or not, we haven't had any substantive conversations about that. There's other challenges to that piece of property in particular. If rail access, we believe rail access is realistic there, but it's not there right now. So that would be a whole nother part of that conversation. Is at the end of the day, it comes down to whether the city were to be more of a speculative nature to say, hey, this is finite property, we should grab this and help advocate for it. Or if the private market came and knocked on our door and said, hey, we're looking for X number of acres that has water access. However it would come together, we certainly would be supportive. But there's not a clear, in my mind, automatic, definite use for that property, because you'll have to see, there's going to be some nuance to it. Who's going to be the tenant, and can they use it with only barges, and can they get under the bridge, and can they do it without rail access, or would they need it? So there's just too many unknowns, I think, right now for us to be able to speculate too far as to it being something that we would go proactively get, and we would want to make sure that it would be valuable to someone. So sometimes the private market decides that. But we're always open to conversations. What I could tell you is it's not like this is a discussion about a price, or it's not like we have a user, but nothing's moving just because there's just too many unknowns to it at the moment. And but anybody interested in it, or anybody bringing jobs, or making this a better community because they're using it, certainly we're going to be supportive. Yep.
We've been receiving complaints from specifically Z-Trip drivers that they are required to have an inspection on any vehicle that they're going to use to pick up riders from the airport.
Yep.
And right now, they're just not sure who they're supposed to be doing that inspection with, who's supposed to issue those decals. So if you could clarify that, and the next part of the question is, what are the requirements as far as like a rideshare company like Uber or Lyft?
So what I can tell you is, I know by, I believe, August 1st, we will have, it was under one department, now it's under another. We will have some clarity as far as where you can get new licenses and by the end of this month. But the bigger discussion here is, this is something that has taken place throughout since the pandemic. Things were suspended in terms of these licenses, and so we'll have our own procedure in place at the airport, which will require background checks, which will require all of the things that we need for drivers to have when they come pick up. So to your question, I can't speak to Uber and Lyft every nuance to their what they ask drivers, other than we know that the background checks are being completed and other things. So we really, frankly, we got to get it tightened up to the point where that everybody's on the same standard. So we've had some issues, minor ones out there where, whether it's unlicensed or cars aren't operating correctly or air conditioning isn't working and all of that. So, we're focusing this month. I can't speak to one person's issue, whether they are or not allowed. I was not made aware of this, specific person. So I just want to be clear. I'm not I'm not speaking to their specific circumstances, but this is us coming out of what was kind of an evolution of something that happened during COVID. And then now we're going to kind of have things in gear. I believe they went through the police department, if that is correct, at first, and now they're going to be going through the airport, this licensing. So, but as far as someone that holds a license not being able to if that's what you're saying, I've not heard.
It's just that they're complaining that the procedure to get a license.
Yeah, so we'll have some clarity of that by the end of the month. And again, that's a handoff from those going through the police department to that going to a function of the airport. So yeah, we'll look at how that works moving forward. I don't know how new it is compared. I would have to look at it. It's under a new administration. Ultimately, it's under an airport license. But all of that had been suspended really since COVID. I mean, a lot of how this process was going to work. So I really chalk it up that this is just something coming out of what was a difficult situation through obviously multiple years, and so we'll have some better functionality and some more clarity for both. What do we want at the end of the day? We want taxi cabs to be able to do business, but we also need to make sure that the proper channels are in place for background checks, for vehicles operating at a certain standard. So we'll get that all done by the end of this month and move forward.
You mentioned the motor lodge a second ago. What's the latest with that? Have y'all done more due diligence on that moving forward?
Yeah, so I know we're about to engage with an inspection, and we've also requested that this inspection involve some idea of ranges of a scope of work. So meaning, if you think about a typical home inspection, it may come and say the floor's good or not good, or the foundation's good or not good. It doesn't give you really any information as it pertains to what the cost would be to fix it, right? They're just telling you, here's what we diagnose. We've asked for an additional layer to that where we'd want to say, hey, if this is broken or this isn't working, give us a general range of what we think the cost might be. And we're doing that really to help make sure that what we're signing up for and what we paid for the property, it matches the value, right? If 5 or 6 of the structures had foundational issues, well, maybe the property isn't worth $855,000, for example. So just like you would with a house. So we're going to do that. What we're getting ready to go, that will be the big fork in the road, of course, is going to say, what does this report say, and what kind of cost are we looking at? But we're already doing legwork, and big credit to several departments here, focused on a few different things after that. Number one is, what is the safety protocol of the property that we now maintain? So, are we going to fence it? Are we going to light it? Are we going to have cameras? There's been discussion about we would go in and actually just potentially go and gut the units as is now. And I know that's a tactic that many folks that have repurposed these hotels across the country have used, to just say, hey, we assume that what's there now will not be staying. So, why not proactively go ahead and do that and add that as part of the project? So we're working with PPD, we're working with Public Works to look at all these things, as well as to get an RFP process going, right? We don't want to wait till day 90 or day 105 to close and then start working on an RFP. So I would say the RFP process, the security process, and the potential demo or anything that we would do, all of those things wait on the inspection. And if we feel okay about the inspection, whether that's on day 30 or day 40, that's 60 more days we're working ahead, and we're not waiting on getting to the last day, closing on the building, and then now having the delta of time between an operator and us be even wider. So I would say step one is, let's see what this inspection says. Let's see what the range of costs are. Make sure that aligns with what our vision is and what our expectations are. And then I think 2, 3, and 4 would be the things I just mentioned: the RFP, the demo, the security aspect of it.
When do you think the inspection will be?
I would have to look. I'd be surprised if it was if it was in more than 30 days. I don't want to speak to, because I don't remember exactly. I was given an update. It might have said 2 or 3 weeks, but to be safe, I would say within 30 days we would have that answer back, and then again we see what that says, and that could take you in a lot of different directions, right? Depending on the condition of the buildings and condition of roofs, or, all those different things.
Could Chief Randall come up?
Yeah, sure.
I understand
This is a good
this
answer.
is an investigation, Chief. What can you tell us about the shooting? What are the details that you can share?
Well, I can share what we've basically already put out in the media. We were following up on a hit and run investigation that occurred in the downtown area. Information led us to this address. Once the officers are at this address, actually while en route, request for backup from our partner agency, the sheriff's office. Prior to them getting there was an altercation between the officer and the individual, ultimately resulted in the unfortunate death of the individual. Immediately rendered medical aid, secured the scene, and as with any officer-involved shooting, we partner with our Florida Department of Law Enforcement, as part of our MOU with them to investigate these things. So we turned over the scene to FDLE, who's taking charge of the aspect of that investigation.
What's the status of the officer?
The officer's on administrative leave, and will be on administrative leave.
It's unusual to have a police officer. We don't hear that many incidents of police officers involved in arrests outside of the city. Am I misunderstanding the situation?
Well, I mean, it's not. I would tell you, it's not unusual in the area we live in, where our investigations start in one jurisdiction in the city, and we do follow up with victims, witnesses, suspects, and different things of that nature outside of the city limits. So, I mean, we have cooperation agreements with the sheriff's office relevant to that, but it's not unusual because crimes occur in the city, whether it's a victim, suspect, or a witness, where we have to go to another location to interview those people to find out more. And that's practiced in a lot of different agencies around the country because, unfortunately, when it comes to criminal justice and crime, sometimes there really are no borders, especially when we live in an area where we got city and county. Some people may be in the city when they commit an offense or a victim of a crime, but live in the county, and we have to follow up in those different areas. So it's not uncommon.
Is it the policy of the police department to wait backup to come before you confronted the individual?
That depends on the nature of the situation, because sometimes situations are very, very fluid based on what's going on. Normally you got your backup en route, but sometimes situations are dynamic. So. Yes, sir.
I do believe the officer was injured. Is there any update on his status?
Um,
Of the injury?
Yes, the injuries were non-life-threatening to the officer.
Okay, so he's okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor, have you heard from Reeves about rehabilitating or updating the Maxwell Center? It had flood damage issues. There were some questions about insurance coverage, 94 families and people who were displaced for an indefinite period of time. Have you heard anything from Benny about what's the next step?
I haven't, other than I know that the process was underway to get the building rehabbed. I have not gotten an update. We can get one. We'll have one for next week, but I haven't gotten.
Specifically, has he come back for more funding to get it rehabbed?
Not to me. I know there's been some emails going around giving updates, but I've not been approached about a specific question about additional funding at this point. My intent still is to, as far as on the bigger picture, ARPA funding. My intent is still to kind of recalibrate what those priorities are and get that back before council. There's still some things, the Lotus campaign, for example, and some other things that might have been priorities a year and a half ago that have changed a little bit. So we are currently looking at that. I'm working with, of course, our finance department and all of our departments on the best path forward. These are dollars that have to be spent by the end of next year, and even though they have survived so far at the federal level that there were some discussions of potential clawback to these dollars if they weren't encumbered by a certain time. So it's time for, between those two things, that the fact that it's probably we have different priorities and the threat of them, whether if they go unencumbered potentially at some point, them being taken back. I think it's time for us to look at that. So we've been in that process. As far as homeless reduction and where those dollars go, I don't foresee there being a dollar amount change to the previous commitment. And that goes for a lot of things that would be on this ARPA list. Just because we're re-looking at that doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing dollar amounts or some things are staying the same. It's just, again, I keep using Lotus as the example. Well, that's $370,000. They've obviously come and said they aren't going to be operating here. So, we're going to perhaps use that and reallocate that in another way for homeless reduction or something like that.
What's the current unobligated ARPA balance?
All right, you're going to quiz me on that. Let me see if I don't remember what the exact. I don't want to speak out of turn on that exact number. It's I got to been working off a spreadsheet as a whole. I know there's about 1.1 and within homeless reduction. I do remember that there's about 1.1. Excuse me, 750,000 is what was left from the original, and then there's this 370,000 that was for Lotus. So in my mind, I can kind of consider that there's about 1.1 million of the ARPA funding left. I want to say, I'm going off memory, I want to say there's somewhere in the $3 million area, but I'll have to get you updated on that. We can get that number too. Yeah.
The city's the affordable housing task force meeting next week, Tuesday, probably at the same time doing the press conference. But there's a item on the agenda talking about city property that could be potentially used for affordable housing. Is there a list of that anywhere, or is that something you're looking at? Or
Look, when I meet with mayors around the country, one issue that we have is the city owns a lot of property, a lot of that property is obligated to city parks, conversations that we've had. Unlike other cities where you go to the larger cities in this country where they may have acres and acres of land that people didn't pay taxes on, or whatever the case may be, how they acquired, entire swaths of neighborhoods and things like that. We don't have that kind of property amounts, but there are properties I know. We've had some early conversations, with the county. There's properties that the county owns right now that are within the city, within city limits. So we're looking at those opportunities, and we know that they're using some of their property to start working on affordable housing. And really, I think a good solution for us might be to band together and kind of say, you work on those and let us work. Let's put our heads together and try to get moving on some of these parcels. The efforts that we had previously, and one continues, 2300 West Jackson Street, had started in the previous administration as a house that's under construction. Then there'd be a lottery for a family to be able to move in that would qualify. But what we were trying to look at, whether it's the motor lodge, whether it's larger parcels or scattered sites, we're looking at how we can attack this thing at scale. And we just know that one at a time isn't going to get us where we need to go. And I mean, just in the case of 2300 West Jackson, our team continues to work diligently on it, and we're at probably a couple years. And we just know that one house at a time isn't going to do it. So hopefully, the county's already had some projects start. I think some within the city limits actually, and that's great. And if there's potential property that they have that's within the city limits that we can help start moving that thing at scale, then that's something that we'd be happy to entertain. And so, I know there's a list that exists of county properties within the city. Obviously, I couldn't rattle off the exact number and where every one of them are. All right, if that's it, thank you guys so much. Good. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week.